So welcome everyone. My name's Alex. Welcome to another creator interview on That CNFT Show. I'm joined today by Seamoss. We have a couple of exciting projects that he's working on that are either in the works, coming out soon, or in the proposal stage. Welcome, Seamoss. Thank you very much for joining me.
Hi, how's it going?
I'm doing very good today. I hope you're doing good as well. So we have a couple things to talk about. Why don't we start with the main focus of what we're going to talk about today is Dropnir, a source of power for NFTs. Why don't you talk a little bit about the idea and the development, and then we'll talk about how we get there.
All right, so Dropnir is aimed to resolve the largest issue that CNFT projects have and the largest issues that SPOs have. It's essentially, there's not really enough levers afforded to either party to distinguish them from each other unless they have an advanced development team. And if they have an advanced development team, they are usually focused on building a solution that may be wonderful, but probably only works on their website. So many people are thinking in centralized ways, trying to build something centralized on a decentralized platform. So Dropnir is a way to create instances of marketplaces that I'm calling art pools that marry the CNFT marketplace and stake pools together. Essentially, the aim is to incentivize holding over flipping. It's a way for more people to join the space as investors who are sitting on the sidelines now because they just don't have time to become full-time flippers. For the CNFT community to move on, there has to be some other way to look at tokens as a serious financial instrument for the floodgates to open and for us to avoid what I perceive as a market bubble if we don't dive headfirst into utility. There are so many beautiful projects that are focused on utility tokens, but they have limits. They're siloed into their own themes. And Dropnir is a way for stake pool operators to configure art pools that essentially reward the holder and the artist perpetually for anything sold through that marketplace.
Okay, so why don't you start by explaining what the name Dropnir means?
Dropnir is an Old Norse legend. Dropnir's original spelling is Draupnir. It's the golden ring that Odin carried, that was made by these two elves, Bokum and, I forgot the other one.
Eitri?
Dropnir's magical power is that every 9 nights, it drips 8 copies of itself, of the exact same size and weight, but without the same magical properties. And when I was looking for a way to describe what Dropnir actually does, I stumbled upon this Norse mythology, and it seemed to match perfectly.
So, and when you're talking about applying that to NFTs, it's obviously not the copying aspect, but it's the perpetual rewards of holding on to this, right?
Yes, essentially you're talking about an interstitial step that's handled by a state machine, aka a sidechain, that dictates the terms upon which revenues should be divvied up upon sale. And the gist of the onboarding process is that the artist essentially decides how much of the sale he wants to give up to be diverted to the stake pool, anywhere from 0%, which becomes just a normal listing, to 100%, hypothetically. The reason why the artist wants to have a high ticket value for his NFT, now because it has utility, and a high diversion amount, is because that is going to be a larger deposit into this pool that indirectly funds this reward stream that comes back to them. The concept of drip tokens is that the user is not beholden to anything. The token itself is what is being tracked across wallets. And whomever happens to hold this token at the moment is the one that gets this drip reward stream.
So I understand how, in the simplest terms, it's almost a royalty system where once the artist can either make money on the initial sale and then none for any further sales, or there's systems in place now that, like you said, are siloed within individual marketplaces where a secondary sale of that asset, some of that sale can go back to the artist. But how is this going to decentralize and move this across markets?
It's going to decentralize everything because it has absolutely nothing to do with the required metadata standard. And it doesn't even require a sale to trigger, like secondary sales to trigger. The amount that is diverted initially from the sale is what is indirectly powering these reward streams. And the catch is the artist gets a bit of each stream for the art that's attributed to them. So however much they're diverting away from the original sale, they will get that back in perpetual royalties, and they don't have to do anything at all. Snapshots are taken about the tokens that are out there and their value and the reward streams that are owed to them. And a portion of that goes to the artist without having to do anything. So you're welcome to adopt any CIP standard for royalties that you like. They're not mutually exclusive because Naptcha doesn't need to look at metadata at all. It's a map between asset IDs or policy IDs for a whole series and utility. It's a map of meaning, essentially, to not overcomplicate it between tokens and utility. And Naptcha was termed this for that reason, because people don't like things to be too complicated right off the bat. If you're talking about a sidechain that maps utility to tokens, that's extremely vague. So I wanted to start with a way for any e-commerce business to make it a lot easier and more secure for people to log in. A singular use case. You can generate tokens or select any existing native token and map it to meaning. In this case, a profile ID that would come back from a login screen. The first thing I want to do is build this into WordPress and Shopify as extensions, so they're embedded in the menu system. And then it would be pretty rudimentary for anybody to invent their own either granular identity system or arbitrary privilege level system or paid subscriber model system. If you put a Naptcha token gate on the template of the CMS, so it's on every page, you suddenly have a paid subscriber model business. You get to dictate whether anybody gets in the website or not, or which parts of the website or which content they get to see based on which tokens that they have. And it'd be up to you as a business to cleverly design this website and put content of value behind certain token gated pages. It could be early access to an airdrop or a game, anything of value.
Or a members only section or a newsletter or anything like that as well, right? So you kind of answered a couple of questions that I had there all at once, and I'm trying to wrap my head around everything that you're talking about. So Naptcha, just to step aside, this was initially a precursor project, meaning no Captchas, so that the holder, you could connect your token instead of verifying your identity in that way. It's just connecting your wallet, holding that token, correct?
When there's no username and password field, then there's no classical attack vectors like brute forcing or revealing asterisk on a physically compromised device. And almost as a side effect, there's no need for Captchas to exist anymore.
So when you've connected the wallet holding the asset that we're talking about, either to, like you said, to a web page, or I can imagine this being used in Discord or whatever other community you want to make access to, or a Shopify store. There's no longer any need to even really log in or have a Captcha, right? It just verifies that you're the holder accessing the site, and then it allows you in.
Right. You're good at this. I think you've done this before.
A little bit. Like I said, you're the technical explanation, but I'm trying to wrap my head around the actual utility and users, how they're going to implement this.
This is the third leg, the third piece of the puzzle, is the on-page script. When you're dealing with a plugin for WordPress and Shopify, it'll be even easier. But for any website, it's the Naptcha business user interface's job, when you're designing a gate key, to then generate a script for you to copy paste onto a page of your choice. And the script will only work on the particular domain, because it's the business users that are paying for the creation of these gate keys and their upkeep. You then slap it onto the page. A major aim of this project is to be the end of all self-coded drops. Everyone has so many clever things going on, but I see so many lines of code being reused. I see a lot of use cases that, if you analyze them, really boil down to a clever combination of a smaller list of Cardano node abilities. So Naptcha essentially is tokenized single sign-on, plus the ability to essentially drag and drop these finite list of subsequent actions, server-side actions. So you have the on-page script. You can think of it as a vending machine app. Think of any typical vending machine app. It's a script with a linear process, some API calls, but this one has no brain. It peeks into your wallet, authenticates with you, so it knows what tokens you have. But then after that, it has no idea what to do. And it's flexible. It sends this request to Naptcha, the sidechain, along with the tokens you have. And it's Naptcha that references its database of gate keys to determine what has to happen next. And what has to happen next is a combination of the user's desired conditions and actions. The condition would be, dude has to have his VIP token or he cannot go past this page. That would be a simpler version. But you could put a secondary conditional of another token. That token could be ADA. And this is how you could have a page whereby token holders go to pick up a physical item to be redeemed. Because that subsequent action could be a standard API call script to your Amazon FBA account to have an order shipped to you.
Interesting.
Right. And all you need is a simple form added to that dumb vending machine app to collect some information from you in order to pass it along to the order. And that secondary token that's required, ADA, is there to cover shipping costs or what have you.
Or I suppose with eventual interoperability, you could accept payments in any cryptocurrency that works on a Cardano node, or that you've invented like if you wanted to pay in Hosky token or something like that, you could set it to do any of that. Now, one of the things that you said there that was really interesting to me, because I want to think about how to tie NFTs to the real world. And I think about things like when I go to, say, a concert and I have a barcode on my phone that I show, how do you tie an NFT in someone's wallet where the wallet addresses are public? You can look up assets. And if I'm showing something to a barcode at the door, how do I not just call up on Pool PM someone else's wallet that holds that asset that is a picture of a barcode to get me into the concert? how do you tie actual ownership of having the private keys to that wallet to being the only person who's able to show that to get in?
How are you doing this, Alex? You're like, all right. So this is a nod that I'm taking from Google Authenticator and other two-factor authentication systems. You're referencing the fact that it would be rather rudimentary, especially in a crowded situation, to create a screenshot or a mock-up UI,
Right.
upload a ticket, to buy a ticket, make a screenshot, sell it, and then still get in. Got you. So,
or just screenshot. Like I know my buddy's 20 minutes behind me. I know his wallet address. I'm going to pull up a screenshot of what's in his wallet and use that to get in before he can get here. Right.
Ready for this? The Naptcha mobile app is going to add one extra layer of functionality. It will be this on-page token gating functionality, except you're not creating any QR code or direct reference to the tokens. The client phone is instead pushing a button that says show NFTs or present ticket. And that is actually triggering a request to a different component of Naptcha, whose only job is to generate one-time use passcodes with a 60-second expiration date.
Got it.
Now, the bouncer or the Disney event ticket holder, whatever, is holding essentially the same app and pushing the verify button. So he's actually scanning the one-time use passcode as a QR, not any direct reference to the token. And Naptcha only creates these one-time use passcodes upon a valid request from a mobile app with those tokens.
Okay. So the other question that I had, and we're still going to get to Dropnir more, but I have one more thing about Naptcha.
Share that with the subsequent actions thing.
Right.
Let's say Taylor Swift can't change her ticket company because of legal reasons. She works with Ticketmaster. She probably doesn't, but let's use them as an example. Under limited circumstances, for security reasons, you should be able to copy paste your own scripts to be ran server side when a gate key passes. That would be scripts that Ticketmaster would provide us that ought to be ran when an order is placed or when somebody enters a venue. And that would be conversion tracking scripts or API calls to their own proprietary systems. I don't need to know how it works. They would provide that script to me, and it would fire when the gate key is validated.
Okay. Because, yeah, so this is, I've talked about, for example, in the player mint, I had a conversation with Adrian working on the player mint, where he was talking about designing an NFT skin, essentially, that you would own to be used in Minecraft Java. And I said, okay, so you're building a decentralized gate that is going to plug into their centralized system and bring the benefits of NFTs to an existing centralized property.
Yeah, essentially. There are so many projects out there that fear the oncoming of smart contract enabled apps because they fear that without the technical knowledge, their art may not be able to compete in this space. And whether or not you have an advanced development team, essentially everybody is trying to do a unique combination of a very, very small number of actions, just in a clever combination. There's the action of minting and sending, of waiting for payment from a unique address. So Naptcha is a way for you to essentially drag and drop logic into these gate keys, pay to have them added so they're functional, and then deploy them on your website.
And then one other thing that you touched on that I wanted to mention with Naptcha is that it's not it's not only going to be for new projects being minted on Naptcha going forward, but you're talking about having an infrastructure where, say, everyone who owns a Space Bud or a Claymate or an Ada Goat, you can attach Naptcha tokens and gates onto those existing communities if that community wants to build something using the system going forward.
I'm losing my mind. Yeah, you're so good. That's another great point. You're helping me out so much, and you don't even know about the functionality. Yeah, you can apply utility retroactively to any native token. It doesn't matter. You're paying for the creation of this utility and its upkeep. So I was in talks with a couple of projects that posed an interesting challenge. They weren't in the business of making new mints over and over again. They had a particular cultural reason for putting out a specific number of tokens and just having them be personal items that people want to hold on to for a long time, not for speculation, but for other reasons, cultural reasons. And you can apply utility retroactively to tokens. So this gentleman would be able to continually sell new forms of utility without having to mint new tokens. He can continue either changing out or adding to the perks that go along with these tokens.
Okay, so now to tie Naptcha's functionality into Dropnir, say that I want to make a simple art piece that allows access to rewards, early access airdrops. How does a user or a project creator access Dropnir and set these things up so that they can use this utility going forward?
The self-onboarding for artists and the complex reward logic is a phase 2 thing. I want to start out with straight ADA rewards and my own fungible token force multipliers. And if I possibly have time, I would like to inject NFTs into that stream from artists that want to come to me directly. But I only have 6 months to put out a functional deliverable. And in the beginning, it will be just raw ADA, and we will take it from there. However, yes, you should be able to set up this reward stream programmatically, whereby, like NFT Maker Pro has now, sales conditions. One thing should not happen before another thing. You cannot purchase this token unless you have this other token in your wallet. It will be a similar logic process to this, where the artist, not the artist, but the stake pool operator essentially gets to decide the logic of this reward stream, but not necessarily the items. And in conjunction with that, the artists that onboard onto this pool get to determine factors concerning their art in particular, like the amount that gets diverted from their art, which then affects the perpetual royalties. So essentially, the end result of what happens upon a sale of an NFT is determined by a partnership between the configurations that the artist set and the configurations that the SPO set.
And those conditions determine not just where that, for example, ADA goes in that initial sale, because obviously, like you said, there's a simple setup now where NFT Maker Pro takes their 2.5% and the artist gets most of the rest. What I'm interested in, so if there's an initial sale and then there's basically B2B users paying for this service, how does this continually generate money for the SPO and the artist as it perpetuates through time? Like if there isn't a secondary sale to pay back as royalties, how does the system keep generating income for the artist and the SPO?
the reward stream can never exceed the value or the cost of the amount of money that is coming in. And the reward stream is handled by a smart contract. And that smart contract is a major beneficiary of that pool. You can stake on behalf of another wallet, and that wallet address can be a smart contract address. So while honestly, I do not have the logic for the reward stream down pat, it's one of the last things to do, and that's why I'm focused on making it simple with an algorithm for ADA. But essentially, the trick there is to ensure that the amount that Slushy, the smart contract beneficiary, is receiving can never be less than the logic of what is expected to go out. And that is why whatever reward logic is involved will not have static values. There will be no way to know exactly who is owed what pretty much until epoch. And then when you have NFTs involved and they have a cost to them, that will have to be factored in. But the reason I'm looking for an SPO partner in this proposal is we will have to be able to project and literally project onto the product page, essentially a timeline of what that reward stream would look like for any given product. As you're shopping around, you're filtering for style and color, but also utility. And the product page is going to have that data too. And the customer, and especially us, have to have a projection before the sale happens of what size reward stream that's going to be.
Now, we're talking about, in most cases, we're talking about external. Let's just talk about ADA again. When you build an NFT project, you want other people to spend ADA to send out the NFTs. But is there a way that you've thought about for example, an SPO to reward holders of NFTs as well as the people staking in their project? Part of that reward system, could that come from the staking rewards generated by the pool itself?
Yeah, Jesus. Your ability to lead is like crazy. So yeah, I wish I could share my screen, but there's this additive reward factor that applies to people who stake. When you stake to the pool, it works just like how you think it does. It's a normal pool, nothing special about the pool itself. And you can stake or not stake and buy drip NFTs from the marketplace or not, or both. So there's essentially 3 buckets that comprise of all of your customers. And if you're only staking, there's still a chance that you could get a drip rewards, which of course could include NFTs when it gets more complicated. And that's because the amount that you're staking, and I do not have the algorithm down pat, but the amount that you're staking should be an additive bonus factor in this reward stream, which means you could receive ADA rewards and drip NFTs without having to touch the marketplace. And if you're an ADA whale, the value of the drip NFTs in your wallet, it's continually being snapshotted. So there's a compounding effect. The value of those NFTs that you either paid for or quote paid for through the reward stream is a compounding factor that continuously grows the reward stream.
Because that becomes another differentiator, how SBOs can offer value to their stakeholders, is say, hey, we have drip rewards associated with NFTs. You can either stake and get your regular, 4.5 to 5% APY, or you can get your 5.5 with us, as well as the potential for these drip rewards. And it's going to go both ways, right?
You might consider that it costs a bit of ADA to mint something, but you could create a series of fungible tokens where you arbitrarily say, this is the value. And that is part of the reward stream. Let's say As a random number, they're worth 10 ADA. So your reward streams are essentially held back until such time as they can afford this token, and then it's sent to you. So it's arbitrarily much more than the actual minting cost. And the reason for that is the value that you, quote, paid for that token is one among the tokens that you have in your wallet when Slushy is considering how much and what to send you. It's a compounding factor. Technically, Slushy does not decide anything. It's a smart contract that can't make outside calls. It goes into another wallet ran by a Cardano node.
So you've mentioned snapshots a couple of times, and the way we kind of do it manually now, right? Like if I release a project in July and on Halloween, I want to release a version where all my guys have pumpkin heads or whatever. I set a date and I say, okay, all holders on this date are going to get this airdrop. And if you move a token after that, you might not get it, blah, blah, blah. So how does Naptcha or how does Dropnir continuously, or I suppose it would be every epoch, snapshot and decide where the rewards are going to go?
Yeah, that's right. It's every epoch. Every epoch, the smart contract is triggered by the receiving transaction of the pool reward.
So it's reading what reward comes into that pool, and then it divvies up that reward according to where the tokens are, and it just does that continuously as a smart contract and runs as long as the blockchain runs.
There'll be node addresses for the smart contract to react to based on the artists that have been allowed into that pool, that are attributed to that pool. But it will be the Cardano node and then the Naptcha hive mind that will actually take care of what ought to happen next. That's why Naptcha is a precursor. My original dev partner came from the IT department of Ford. His job was to design systems that collect and process telemetrics data for vehicles. And he recommended HiveMQ, so I'm going to go with that. It's a IoT system for managing workflows of titanic amounts of data. And I actually had to explain to him that he had been developing sidechains for years without knowing what the term meant. He was a little new to crypto.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So Naptcha would be taking care of the relationship between the on-page script and the utility. Naptcha would be taking care of the CNFT marketplace activity and those subsequent actions, the diversion amounts. And then as a microservice, creating those one-time use passcodes.
Okay. So I'm getting a little bit better of idea of what Naptcha and Dropnir are going to do. What is next in your development process? And talk to me about your Project Catalyst involvement and where you're at in that process as well.
So just the other day, it was promoted to the next phase. It's being assessed by people. I got some good feedback and I think I have a shot. Essentially, what I'm asking for is the money to deliver the first viable product in 6 months, which would be Dropnir's reward stream and this first CNFT marketplace, but also incidentally, Naptcha version 0, because that is the map of meaning that I need to build for both Naptcha and Dropnir to work. I'm essentially going to lock myself in a cabin for 6 months and come out with a product. I've tried finding dev partners, but I understand the way the world works is people believe you when it's real. So this fund is essentially for me to just make it with my own bare hands. There's some money in there for a professional cloud architect. I'm certainly going to need one because I want my role to be as the Plutus Haskell expert. It doesn't make any sense to me to learn every language, classical language, that would be required when there's billions of people that already know those languages. My edge should be, needs to be, will be the Plutus.
And connecting connecting Haskell to those legacy systems.
Right, the application backend.
So
And Cardano node scripting.
Right. So as you're building out the product in the next 6 months, working with an SPO or potentially several SPOs, what are the steps once you deliver that product in 6 months, and what are you looking at building out a year from now?
People now pretty well that are stake pool operators. I'm going to use them as guinea pigs, essentially. But I also have laid out in the proposal $5,000 for an initial testing stake pool. And all I really need is for the stake pool to exist, essentially, because this project is not about getting as much luck or rewards or delegators as possible. It's my goal for success would be how many SPOs are actually using this to create their own art pool instances. I am not focused on making money from Dropnir pool. I'm focused on charging business users on a reverse cost-based basis for how much it's going to cost essentially to run these gate keys from a hosting and data execution perspective.
And I know you've talked about you're going to start with a simple menu, so to speak, of programs, and those are going to get a little bit more complicated. And I'm sure your sort of fee structure is as you develop and get closer to that. How are you going to incentivize artists and SPOs to start working together in your test net? Well, not test net. I know that's the wrong term, but your test product in the next few months or the next 6 months.
It may sound a little naive, but I'm hoping that first they all pretty much know what I do and they're rooting for me already. So it'll be a fairly easy sell. What I plan on doing is essentially offering zero work on their part, other than a commitment to consistent meetings and consultations. It would be great if I could borrow from some of their team and implement this onto their stake pools. But at the moment, the priority is getting my own pool set up. I need to be an expert in this personally, and essentially, maybe naive, but I'm hoping they just understand the immense value of being one of the first to implement it.
I can see it. Not owning or running a stake pool myself, I can definitely see where you're headed with this. In terms of, I wanted to touch on before we went, ZeroDayRealms, highlighting projects, NFT projects, as well as highlighting stake pools. Why don't you tell me about some of the things you're building with ZeroDay?
Sure. So ZeroDay Realms is an umbrella term for a series of events and soon metaverses, specifically for Cardano. I'm seeing a lot of talk across Twitter Spaces and essentially everywhere else that it's hard to. There's no real map in this decentralized landscape to what everybody is doing. It's rather disconnected, and we feel lucky that when we discover a new Twitter space or when we discover a project that just so happens to be right up our alley. So ZeroDayRealms is a place to hang out with friends, network in very much in the same way as we do with Twitter Spaces, host presentations and dissertations, sponsored branded events, and commerce, the number one. I've been hosting some gallery sales. There's a link between the products on the website and the quote SKUs that are in VR. There are little sale price tags. It takes a while to build out each per sale item, per artist item, and then put it in VR. But essentially, if somebody is selling a clay privately, the SKU will be clay 1. Then you just go to the site. The product page is not for you to check out per se. It simply explains to you how to buy it, which means that it's compatible with however you're selling. If it's currently listed on token, or if it's privately in your wallet, or if it's a live drop, that'll actually be color coded onto the price tag in VR, and the design will be appropriate on each product page. So you might find an actual vending machine app on that page, or you may find simple instructions to contact this person and ask them for a price.
Sure. Anything from like if you go to a physical gallery now or something hanging in a coffee shop, there might be a QR code next to it, or just someone's business card tacked to the wall, right? That makes me think of an idea that I had a few weeks ago that I was just going to do through Twitter Spaces, have a music concert and pin a tweet to the artist's web page or sale or wherever. If you like the music you're listening to, just follow this tweet and get buying instructions. But I think VR is a little bit more immersive and interesting than hosting it on a centralized platform like I was talking about.
So we're looking for live performers of all kinds to add to our roster. And pretty much anyone that has access to a 2D or a 3D stream, we can put it in VR. I believe it was last weekend, we had a very chill get together where a drum and bass DJ live streamed with some very crafty overlays that had CNFT drop promotions in them. And they played on a live screen in the virtual event. Now, what I want to get into are people with access to 360 cameras. I've spoken to people that like to film nature, that like to film protests, really intense stuff. I've talked to people that are in live bands. If you have a 360 camera, I can tokenize access to that event, and I can inject an audience directly into your stage. Furthermore, I'm looking for a software license, the next level up. It's quite pricey, but I think I found enough founders to pull the trigger for, quote, persistent sessions, aka metaverses. That also comes with a Unity SDK, which means I don't need a live stream from a camera. I can design anything I want, branded to the theme of the project that is hosting the event.
So you could build a nightclub that persists before and after a particular concert or a particular news conference or a particular theater performance. You could build that theater ahead of time, have people go whenever they wanted and watch the performance when it's actually being broadcast.
I could sell CNFT tickets to an event that extends in one shot a pregame, then injects you into a video stream, and then takes you back to the environment.
That sounds pretty amazing as well. So if this, at what point, and you're building a lot of stuff right now. At what point can you keep ZeroDayRealms going and growing until you have to lock yourself in that cabin and build Dropnir? Or are you looking at making it a self-sustaining business so that you don't have to set up each one of these yourself?
I'm talking to a lot of CNFT projects that want to have these branded environments. And what I'm going to do to not paint myself into a corner here, you see ZeroDay essentially as a way for me to fund Dropnir. I'm having these projects co-host their own spaces. So they get to benefit from the audience growing, and I essentially don't need to be there once I build the environment. I'm also measuring 100 times and cutting once. Most of the time I'm spending on ZeroDay is actually building out documentation and template structures. I'm trying to make it so that if I just disappeared tomorrow, a random group of people could potentially run it smoothly just by reading the docs.
And I suppose you're looking at building a library of assets where, say, I want to build a house in The Sims. I'm not making any of those pieces of furniture or art on the wall or the appliances that they're using. I can pick and choose from a menu and a list of options and put that all together myself.
Yeah, I mean, a custom house would be pricey because it would require a lot of time from a very professional Unity SDK developer, right? That would have to put a lot of thought and precision into it. But yeah, then it would be yours. Essentially, this next commercial license, this next license up, allows us to build and sell events in metaverses for others.
Amazing, amazing. So it's an exciting time. I really appreciate you taking the time to share this with me, because we're right at the we're right at the cusp of all this stuff being realized, and I haven't talked to anyone yet who's so thoroughly thought about and is actually building these things. So I really appreciate you taking the time to go over some of these ideas with me.
It's been a pleasure. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining me. Thank you to Seamoss for sharing what you're building. I'm going to be working on getting this out as soon as I can because there's a lot of exciting ideas that we talked about today, and I've got a lot to wrap my head around. So thank you once again, and good luck building everything, and good luck with your Catalyst proposal.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks very much. Have a good one.